Hi, I'm Amanda Miller, creator of Amanda Said. Welcome to my educational series, The Biology of Trauma and Healing, The Shocking Truth. Over the next 60 minutes or so, you'll learn the key techniques that I've learned and used to become an expert on trauma release. I'll show you exactly how to understand, overcome, and release your trauma and your overwhelm so that you can live a trauma-free life and become 1,000,000 times stronger than you were before. And that's not a poorly written exaggeration. I do mean that literally, just not in your biceps. 1,000,000 times stronger in a way that is more impactful than leg day. It's likely that you are seeking something if you are interested in this series: clarity, solutions, relief, drastic change. And I'm sure that you've heard many plausible pathways that should have gotten you these things already. So why didn't they work? Well, I will give you that answer in this series. It has to do with how your brain receives communication and how you communicate with it. I'm guessing it's a skill set you weren't taught or that you were taught incorrectly. Once you have the knowledge of how to support your subconscious brain and a partnership with what you consciously want, it all unlocks and the deep joy and satisfaction of life really begins. Now we're going to break down this information together bit by bit. I have a lot of good news to share, and I'm going to lay it out for you like a 4-course meal of clinically studied, scientifically verified, proven facts and skills. In this training, you'll receive an understanding of the biology of trauma, the science behind what trauma actually is and what it isn't, what causes it, and how to actually get rid of it for good. An understanding of how emotional freedom techniques, EFT, also known as tapping, connects you to the parts of your brain that govern your trauma response and why that matters. You'll also understand how the 5 rhythms of Chinese medicine are the most actionable and easy to apply system that you can use for forward movement with yourself and with others. And finally, you'll discover how you can use everything that you learn here for more than just releasing your pain. You can use it for peak performance. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction? This is the science behind it. It's real. It's gotten skewed and is often misleading on what it actually is, but it is real. This is the key to manifestation. You don't need to learn how to heal. I would bet that you already know how to do that. You are likely already an expert at knowing how to heal. That's not the sticking point of why things don't work. If you have been healing for years and you still aren't where you want to be, I have a lot of good news for you. I know this already sounds like a lot, and that's fair, it is. I won't drop truth bombs on you for an hour and then wave goodbye for forever. By the very end of this training, you'll gain clarity about what your next best steps are for beginning to release the trauma so that you can live life on your own terms as the person you are without all that you are not. But first, we need to get clarity on why and how these steps are effective. To explain why knowing that is important, let me share my story with you. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD when I was 37. My complex trauma began when I was 2.5 years old. I experienced trauma due to other people, directly and indirectly involving me. I experienced trauma due to my own body malfunctioning from a 17-year-long childhood chronic illness that left me in pain so badly that sometimes I couldn't see or hear anything. I experienced trauma from my own imagination as I lived through all the heinous fears that I could conjure so that I could be ready should they happen. And I had zero understanding of what was happening as a result of these experiences. I felt lost, broken, and hopeless. I was embarrassed and ashamed by the depths of my fears, and I was absolutely certain no one would understand. And then I got pregnant, and I knew I had to find better so that I could be present for my child. Now, it took me years to find all of the pieces. I read biology books and psychology books, and I attended seminars and workshops, and I gained official channels of education and certifications and paid for my own sessions of therapies, and I took note of my responses. So much of what I already knew should have helped, but there was one major missing key: No one knew how to show me how to apply it so that it would integrate and activate. I knew it, I understood it, and I agreed with it, but how to achieve applying it was a painful mystery. So I solved it, and now I share it. When I was 37, I was deep into my career of helping others release trauma, and I was well known for it. But I was so full of my own trauma that I was terrified of leaving the house to go grocery shopping because of all of the potential disturbing possibilities of danger for me and my young child. I was constantly expecting to be attacked, and nowhere was safe. I was gutted in how I could assist others daily in what I could not give myself: peace, relief, freedom. And then I attended a workshop that ended up being the workshop. 4 months after attending this workshop, I was in a foreign country with a busted cell phone and completely lost, not knowing the language and not knowing how to get a hold of my group. And I was fine. I was fine because for the first time in my life, I could translate my life by only the moment that was happening. And I could tell that I was safe and that I would be okay. This empowerment gave me my life back. I was finally a functional human being. Everything I learned was a key aspect of understanding what trauma really is and what I could do about it. But it took me years and thousands of dollars to find it. Knowing where I was and where I am now, oh, that fills me with a purpose. Everyone should have access to this information. Everyone should have this chance. And I'm going to teach you right now what that information is and how to truly apply it to release your trauma permanently. First things first, let's learn about the biology of trauma. This is the science behind your brain freaking out. What is trauma? When I ask people this question, the answer I get back most often is, isn't trauma when I live through a horrible experience? And the answer is no. No, that's not a definition for trauma. That's actually a definition for survival. And we do want survival. So we don't want to take that away. A good definition for trauma is when the brain fails to downregulate after a survival experience. Now, if this doesn't make sense to you yet, don't worry. That's what we're going to talk about. First, I want you to understand your brain in a very clear and concise way. We're going to talk about it from conscious versus subconscious responses. Now, your conscious brain is what you govern, what you control, what you're aware of. It's, oh, I need to scratch my arm. I want to sing. What should I have for dinner? It communicates through logic, things that make sense. It's very linear. It has an understanding of time. You can think about 2 weeks ago or tomorrow, and that makes sense to you. Your subconscious brain, which I lovingly call my subby because it's my dear friend. So you'll hear me refer to it as the subby. That's what I'm talking about as the subconscious. Your subby governs the pH balance of your blood, your cellular repair, your digestion. It communicates via feelings and habits. So if you ever have a feeling you're like, I don't understand why I feel this way, it's because it's something from your subconscious brain that your conscious brain isn't connected to. If you're behaving in a certain way, you're acting in a habit that you're like, I don't want this. Why is this what I'm doing? Again, it's a subconscious behavior that's being translated in a way that's different than your conscious mind can understand. They speak in different ways and they don't translate easily from one to the other. It also doesn't have an understanding of the passing of time. Everything to your subconscious brain, it analyzes as if it is happening in this moment exactly. It also is responsible for the translation of your sensory input. Now, this is really important. We're going to talk more about this later. Because of everything that the subconscious brain governs, it takes up about 95% of our brain function, whereas the conscious brain, what we're aware of, what we control, gets about 5% of that function. The subconscious brain processes 4 billion bits of information a second. Now, this is internally and externally. 4 billion bits per second. The conscious brain processes about 200 bits per second. Now, bonus question, where do those 200 bits that the conscious brain processes come from? If you said from the 4 billion bits, ding, 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 you are correct. Now, the subconscious brain decides what 200 bits we become consciously aware of based off of all of these guidelines and filters that are in place that you may not even be aware of because they were put in place when you were at a very, 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 very young age. And we'll get into more of that as well. Because of all of its enormous amount of function, it is necessary and true that the subconscious brain is 1,000,000 times stronger and faster than our conscious brain. 1,000,000 times. That's really hard to quantify, but let me give it a shot. If we were to draw a dot for each bit of information that's being processed for our conscious brain and our subconscious brain, and drawing a dot takes us about a second to draw, then for you to represent every bit of information that the conscious brain is receiving every second, it would take you about 3.5 minutes to draw all of those dots. Now, if you were drawing all of the dots for all of the information that the subconscious brain processes in a single second, it would take you 127 years. That is the difference of processing strength and functionality between what we know and what we're generally not aware of. So let's talk about how the subconscious brain receives information that it's processing. It receives it through our sensory organs, meaning sight, smell, touch, taste, hear. Now, these organs are objective, meaning they don't make decisions based on what they're receiving and translating. Our eyes don't go, ooh, that's gross. They just go, oh, this is what we're looking at. Now, when it sends that information to the brain is highly subjective, and it does make determinations on what it's seeing based on those preset ideals that we already have embedded as our filters of how we feel about things and how we're going to respond. So when we receive this input in a regular pathway, meaning when our brain is down regulated, we're in normal brain function, it bounces around to all these different areas and we receive a full 360-degree view and opinion of what it is that we're receiving, and then move forward in whatever direction that gives us. Now, when our brain is in an upregulated pathway, meaning a survival function, survival mode, the way it translates information is very different because it might matter every millisecond if we're going to survive or not. It is funneled through this very intense pass-fail decision of, does this information pertain to our survival? If it does, it's considered. If not, then it's dismissed. Now you see this dotted line here. This is to represent our conscious brain generally being excused from the table. What I mean by that is we continue to have conscious thought when we're in this upregulated pathway, but it's not considered in the overall outcome of what we experience. A great example of this would be when you're woken up in the middle of the night by a strange noise. Okay, you hear a thud, and you, okay, you're immediately in an upregulated pathway. Your brain is going, are we needed to survive right now? And so you're frozen in a position ready for action, and your heart's beating really fast, and you're breathing kind of shallow, and you're listening super intently. But then nothing else happens. So you're waiting. And then your conscious brain starts going, you know what? It was probably the cat. Oh, it's probably the windstorm that's happening right now. Oh, it's likely the house settling because the temperature is changing. And all of these thoughts are very logical, and they're very likely. But you're still frozen in that position. You're still ready for action, you're still breathing shallow, and you're still listening intently, just in case you need to respond for survival. And it's likely you're not going to be able to relax until you get up and you go and make certain that your survival is not being threatened, and then you can accept these very logical conclusions and go back to bed. But what if I told you there's another consideration? What if I told you there is a sixth sensory organ? And I don't mean intuition. To give you this example, we're going to go into a little bit of pretend here. So follow along with me. Look at the lemons on your screen right now. Now we're going to pretend that those lemons are real. So go ahead and see yourself. You can act it out with your body or just pretend inside of your head. see yourself reaching and grabbing one of those lemons. You see all that juice, it's dripping over your electronic device that you're watching this on, and now you've got this lemon in your hand. You can feel the pitty skin against your fingertips, and you've got that juice that's running down the lemon. It's pulling in your hand, and you can smell that crisp, sour citrus that's coming from it. And now I want you to bite into it. Bring it up to your mouth and just a huge chunk of it into your mouth. And now you've got this juice flowing, flooding your tongue into those back pockets in the back of your jaw. You can feel the flesh of the lemon against your teeth, against the roof of your mouth. Now let me ask you this. Did your mouth water? Could you see the yellow lemon in your hand? Could you feel the texture of the lemon on your fingertips? How is it possible that your body responded to seeing, feeling, tasting, touching something that you absolutely knew wasn't there? Your conscious brain is a master sensory organ, meaning it has the ability to create things that are either a recall of something that was real or creating something that was never real, and giving that information to the subconscious brain like a sensory organ as if it is happening right now. Which is why you can imagine a lemon and you can say, oh, but I could smell it. Oh, but I could taste it. And your mouth will water and your brain will register a scent and your skin will register a texture. Because the conscious brain is so strong, it can pull the other sensory organs into its lie. And the subconscious brain has no choice but to receive it. The subconscious brain is in a skull submarine. It doesn't have the ability to stick a neuron out of your ear and go, ha, you're lying. There's no lemon in your hand. It has to go off of the information that it is receiving. It has to choose it as fact and respond from that space. The reason this is important is because if you are with your conscious brain, with your conscious function choosing, however it feels like you're choosing or not choosing it, but you are focusing on something that is overwhelming, that is scary, that is traumatic, whether it happened but not right now, or you're afraid of it happening, your subconscious brain will respond as if it is truly happening right now. So let's talk about why that's important. In order to understand overwhelm, let's talk about where that line of overwhelm happens. Now, it is true that you can have a bad experience and it not be traumatic. And then there's a point where it crosses that boundary and it's definitely traumatic. As trauma has been studied, there are these 4 categories that have emerged as kind of the line of where that tends to happen. And they are when you feel helpless, that there was nothing that you could do, nothing that you were going to do was going to change this outcome. And so you feel helpless, and that's traumatic. You feel violated. I never thought they would do that. I never thought they would say that. I thought they would do that. I thought they would say that. Your expectation of what was going to happen is violated, which you can do yourself. If you had an expectation of yourself of a certain behavior and that's not what happened, then that can feel overwhelming and traumatic as well. The next section is feeling alone. I had nobody. I was completely by myself. No one was going to support me. No one was going to believe me. No one was going to help me. I had to do it all on my own. And when you feel threatened, I thought I was going to die. Now, all of these are perceived situations. It is possible for you to be in a room surrounded by people who love you, who care for you, who want to help you. But if you feel alone, if it's your perception that you're alone, it's possible for you to be traumatized. Now, there is that line of where it is a bad experience to traumatic. So there are exceptions to trauma being trauma. Let's talk about what I mean by that. I'm going to define it through saying it's tenacity, where some things are bad experiences for some, but are traumatic for others. Why is that? Well, to explain that, we're going to talk about a principle that you likely have a misunderstanding of right now, but I know you've heard of it. It's fight or flight. Now, fight or flight is mostly talked about as our survival response, and it is, but we're going to go in depth in it in a way that you likely haven't heard of it before. Now, what fight or flight actually is different levels of feeling helpless. So there are different levels of engagement of survival. Another way to say that is that they are levels of dissociation. Now, dissociation is generally lumped in as being the same thing as overwhelm, and in one space it is, but there's more to it than that. A very simple way to explain dissociation is the disconnection or separation of something from something else. It's just the state of being disconnected, okay? We're talking about just space. To explain how this applies to your brain and trauma and overwhelm, we're going to use a metaphor. So let's say this glass of water right here is you. The amount of space that you have in your glass is your tenacity. So as the water or your fight or flight, your levels of dissociation are increased, your tenacity lowers. And when that glass is full, then you are now in a traumatic situation, all right? And let's say that you are out to dinner with some of your friends. Now you're at this restaurant and a stranger comes up and they're just being really overbearing and overwhelming. Well, this triggers you into the beginning of a survival state because they're violating your expectation of how strangers respond to each other in a restaurant. We just kind of agree to ignore each other, right? And we have our own spaces at our own tables, and this person is violating that. So you jump into your first response to that, which is fight, which is asserting your boundary. Dissociation, you're going to try to get space by saying, we stay, you go. So you say something along the lines of, hey, you're not welcome over here. You're bothering us and you need to go away. Now, if they went away at that point, then you might be a little bit irritated, but you're fine. You're not traumatized. But let's say that doesn't work. They continue to get more obnoxious and more in your space. And so you still feel threatened. You don't feel safe yet. So your body upregulates to the next layer of potential dissociation, which is flight. Now, flight means you abandon your boundary and flee. Now we're going to try to get that distance between you by they stay and you go. And what this might look like is you say something along the lines of, fine, if this table is so important to you, then you have it, we're out of here. And let's say that works. So you get up and you get reseated, or you leave to go to another restaurant or just go home. At that point, you're probably really irritated, you're really bothered, but still not necessarily traumatized. Okay, but let's say that doesn't work. They get even more obnoxious, and as you get up to try and leave, they grab your arm. So now you can't leave the situation. So your body is going to up level to the next level of potential dissociation, and you're going to step into freeze/fawn. Now what this means is you're going to attempt to get out of being their target. You're going to do this in one of three ways. You're going to freeze, which is where you're not communicating at all, and you're hoping that they're going to lose interest because you're no longer engaging with them. You're going to fawn, which means you're going to join forces, like you care about them. Oh, it really seems like you're going through something difficult. I'm so sorry for whatever's happening. Do you need to talk? Do you need to talk to someone? Can I call someone for you? Anything that allows you to feel like you're on the same side as them. And the third option would be you're going to try to appeal for mercy from them. So maybe you're ow, you're hurting me. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Please leave me alone. I just want to have dinner with my friends, and gain their compassion, gain their pity for you. Again, anything to get you out of their line of seeing you as a target. And let's say that works. So at this point, if they left you alone, you would probably be shaken. You would be upset for maybe a little length of time, but still not necessarily traumatized. But let's say it didn't work. They keep a hold of your arm, they continue to overwhelm you, and your brain, recognizing that all those levels of upregulation have not worked, and now you're truly in a helpless state to make any difference, takes you into the last level of dissociation that exists, which is the one that's typically called dissociation, which is overwhelm, where now your brain is just going to disconnect you from the experience. It's going to kind of numb you out to allow you to not receive so much overwhelm from all of this traumatic input that you're receiving until this experience is over. So I have two questions for you here. How does this explanation explain how some things are bad experiences and some things are traumatic experiences? Well, what if you started this experience with your cup almost full, and it only took one level of engagement for you to reach that state of overwhelm. Then at that very first state, you're already traumatized. Instead of having the space in your cup to level up to all those different layers before you reach that state of complete helplessness. That's the answer to one question. My next question for you is, once you fill your cup and you're in the state of overwhelm, how are we ever not constantly in this state of overwhelm? Well, the answer to that is you empty your cup, right? You regain your tenacity. The way that we do this, we have a lot of ways of doing this naturally that we don't even think about. We find a place where we regain the feeling of safety. This can be going home, getting in a bathtub, getting in the shower, getting in our bed, getting in the arms of a loved one, crying to someone, going and talking to someone of authority. All of these things, something that sends the message to our brain of, okay, now we're safe again, and we can start to regulate down out of this state of survival because it's no longer needed. But what if that message never gets across? What happens then? Let's talk about that. This graph is showing you an example of that. So north-south, we have the experiences that can happen in this person's lifetime, and left to right is the time as it passes. So they're going along in their life, trying things out, and it's different levels of comfort, and then bam, they hit a traumatic experience, they've been overwhelmed, and now their brain is in an upregulated state, and they are feeling traumatized. The brain now takes this view and changes it from good, neutral, and uncomfortable to that very narrow scope, remember, that pass-fail. And it only sees survival and danger, because anything that takes us out of our space of feeling like we can survive is dangerous. Now, all of these spaces that were comfortable before, that felt good before, are seen by the subconscious brain as dangerous. So anytime you start to feel comfortable, you're also going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to feel scared and nervous, maybe paranoid, even though consciously you're looking around and your conscious brain is saying, but we're hanging out with friends, but we're at the library, but we're in bed in our very safe neighborhood and nothing's happening. Why do I feel this way? And so the brain will intentionally stress you out to get you into that safe level. No matter what input is happening consciously, your subconscious brain is going to say, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe. And so it will encourage you to have negative thoughts, to increase your negative input so that you reach that state of high stress, the stress that is the level where it says, this is where we were safe before, so now we have to reach this level all the time or we're no longer safe. And once you reach that high level of stress, you're going to feel stressed, but you're also going to feel powerful. You're going to feel safe. You're going to feel like it's good to be there. And that's going to be very confusing to your conscious brain. Your two brains are not communicating on the same point of what's important. And remember, your subconscious brain will always care about survival first, and it will communicate that to you in habits and in your emotions. So that's why you may be acting in a way that doesn't make sense. You're feeling in a way that doesn't make sense consciously. And it will not care or prioritize your love, your health, your connection, your satisfaction, your happiness, etc., until it feels you are safe from a survival sense. So what does that look like in your everyday behavior? I have a list for you here. If you need to pause it so that you can look at these one at a time and kind of think through it, please do that. This is not an exhaustive list. And if these behaviors look familiar, you're not alone. Almost everyone is stuck in some state of survival behavior. This is why and how your brain freaks out. And ignoring your trauma doesn't work. Muscling through it isn't an answer. It's a lot like trying to muscle a beach ball full of air underneath the water in a pool. You can do it for a short amount of time, but that ball is going to slip and it's going to erupt as it comes out. But there are some reasons that are common on why people avoid healing their trauma. One is that they feel hopeless. I'm too broken. There's too much. It's just, there's no point because it's not going to work for me. Or they feel overwhelmed. I'm already dealing with so much. I cannot even think about adding anything in. I'm just trying to survive right now. I can't handle thinking about another thing, even if it's positive. They are judging themselves very harshly. They feel embarrassed. They feel weak. They feel ashamed. I can't believe that this is where I am. I feel so weak that this still has such a grip on me. I should be over this by now. Or they're completely unaware and they think it's normal. Oh yeah, well, everybody has stressful things from childhood. Doesn't everybody worry that when it's dark outside that they're about to get stabbed? I mean, that's normal, right? Right? No. So what does the subby prioritize over survival? And I have an asterisk here because the answer is if you are in a true survival situation, it's nothing. There's nothing that the subby will prioritize over your survival. But if it's an outdated survival response, then there is an answer. And that answer is it will prioritize clearing outdated information. So our definition for trauma is when the brain fails to downregulate after a survival experience, which now we have an understanding of, right? Another way of saying that is an outdated upregulation. Trauma is an outdated upregulation, which is a huge waste of resources because when you are in a true survival experience, there's a lot of function that your body is putting towards surviving. So if it doesn't need to do that anymore, it wants to know. But the question is, how do you tell your subconscious that? If your conscious brain is excused from the table, if the two parts of your brain speak different languages, and the 200 bits of information that you are aware of consciously come from this highly prioritized pass-fail survival-only sense that's coming from the subconscious brain, how do you reach the subconscious brain and say, hey, what you're translating right now is outdated? You do it by giving it an impactful realization and by offering conflicting evidence. Now, I have two really solid ways to show you how to do this in a very simple and succinct manner that you can recognize a difference in minutes. And those are through EFT tapping and through the 5 rhythms of Chinese medicine. Let's talk about those. First, let's talk about EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Now, I'm going to approach this from the standpoint of clinical EFT. Not all EFT is clinical, meaning it's been standardized and clinically tested and proven. EFT is typically a pretty harmless application as long as you're applying it to yourself. Now, if you are attempting to show it to someone else, I really, really recommend that you do it with a clinically certified practitioner, because having someone in front of you that you're trying to help guide them through their trauma, the possibility of leading them into overwhelm and then not knowing how to get them out of that is high. Don't do that if you're not trained in how to do it. If you're doing it on yourself, it's a little bit easier for you to step away from where that's going, okay? But if you step into EFT that's not clinically certified, then there's just a chance of it not really working or it working improperly. There is a chance of a negative outcome. So that is my disclaimer for you. You want to use clinical EFT so that you know you're getting a consistent result because it has been clinically tested. In fact, it's been clinically tested in over 100 clinical studies, including metadata analysis, which means it's analyzed in a very strict manner, still showing to be effective. So effective that it's been shown to resolve PTSD in 6 one-hour sessions. And the group of people that this was tested on the most were veterans who have returned from war. Whether it's only been years or over 50 years, the results are the same. EFT is simple and it's gentle enough for any age. I've used this on children as young as 4 years old. And it's more effective than talk therapy alone. The reason for this is because it incorporates the most effective parts of talk therapy and then has its own little flavor added on top. The best thing that I love about EFT is it's not re-traumatizing. You don't have to talk about what happened. You don't even have to think about what happened. It allows you to communicate with your subconscious brain in a way to let go and release these things in an empowering way that feels good and feels safe. So let's get into it. Now, EFT is called tapping because of the way you physically tap on the body. Now, we do this over specific points called acupoints. They're the same points that are used by acupuncturists, which you can Google a chart and you'll see there's over 300 points on the body that an acupuncturist uses. We don't need all of those. It's been clinically proven that these points are sufficient. In fact, one point is enough for you to have the effect that you want out of EFT, because what that point is doing is it's communicating with your subconscious brain in a way that interrupts its train of thought. When you tap over these areas that are acupoints, these points are more electrically sensitive than the rest of your skin. So it allows for this motion of tapping to send an electric signal that is translated by the subconscious brain to be pleasing. And we'll talk about why that's important in a second. But just so that we're clear on where the points are, if you go to the top of the head by touching the tips of your ears and drawing a line across the top, you're going to find that point. The end of your nose to the end of your eyebrow is where you're going to find this point. The side of your eye, just in alignment with where your pupil is on the bone, in alignment with your pupil underneath on the bone, in between your nose and your lips, underneath your lips, closer to your lips than the bottom of your chin, in the middle. Find the edge of your collarbones, and it's directly underneath the inside edge of that bone. Fingers, 4 fingers width into your armpit, it's right below that. And on the side of your hand, right in this indentation that happens from the line that crosses your palm, right there. These are the points that you're going to tap to make what you do with the tapping effective to communicate with your subconscious brain. So let's talk about what else you're going to be doing. This chart is going to give you everything you need to know. First, we're going to discover, what is it that I am experiencing? And the answers we're looking for are related to our feelings, our thoughts, our sensory input. Remember, because all of this is being translated by the subconscious brain. So we want to find a way to connect and communicate through something that it's receiving. Next, we're going to document, how much is this bothering me? We're going to use something that you're already familiar with, the SUD scale. SUD stands for subjective units of distress. It's the same thing that your doctor uses when they say, okay, so on a scale of 0 to 10, how much pain are you in? So you apply it by asking, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is this feeling bothering me? How much is this thought bothering me? How much is this pain in my knee, the sensory input, the sight of this image bothering me? And that's your answer. So you write that number down. Next, we're going to apply EFT. So you already know the spots to tap. Let's talk about what else you apply. So I mentioned that we use the most successful parts of talk therapy, and those are cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure therapy. You don't really need to know right now what those are. I go more in detail on that on another resource that I have for you. But for now, just know that's what we're applying when we use this statement that's here. So we're going to take what we discovered. Let's say that we discovered, right now I'm feeling like I'm not good enough. And that is currently bothering me at a 9 out of 10. It's almost distraught right now that I'm not good enough in this situation. Now we're going to apply tapping as we use this statement. This is called the setup statement. It's one of the 48 clinically proven techniques. It's in a set of tools called the basic recipe, and I'll give you a resource for that after the webinar is over. So we begin tapping. Even though right now I don't feel good enough and it's bothering me at a 9, I deeply and completely accept myself. Now we're going to integrate some other of the techniques. I will go through it very briefly. One is called radical acceptance, the pendulum swing, and sensory experiences, which has a technical name called chasing the pain. So let's talk about what those are. The radical acceptance is we're just going to radically accept everything. We're going to make everything okay. This is part of that cognitive behavioral therapy. We're reframing anything that we're judging, anything that we're casting out, anything that is getting in the way of the actual problem. Well, I don't feel good enough and I'm angry about that. I feel silly about that. I feel terrible about that. All of those other things that we're feeling about the actual issue are getting in the way of dealing with the actual issue. So we're just going to say, yeah, I accept that. Okay. I don't feel good enough and I accept that that's the way that I feel right now. I don't like it. I don't want it. I want it to go away, but I accept that that's where I am right now. Okay, well, that clears out all of those things. Now you have this clear pathway. Next, we're going to apply one of the other techniques. The pendulum swing is where we're going to try to put boundaries on how big this actually is. Saying I don't feel good enough can expand really, really far. So we're going to see where too far is to where the subconscious brain goes, I don't know that that's true. So we're going to kind of bring that in. And I don't know that that's accurate. So we're going to bring that in and start to really show ourselves how big this actual issue is. What that might look like is, even though right now I don't feel good enough, I deeply and completely accept myself. I don't feel good enough in anything ever. I don't feel like anything I do is good enough. I don't feel like I brush my hair good enough. I don't feel like I brush my teeth enough. I guess I don't feel like I walk good enough. I don't feel like I complain good enough. Like even right now, I feel so sorry for myself and I'm not even doing that good enough. Okay, that's really silly. Of course I brush my teeth good enough and I know how to brush my hair and I know how to walk. So if it's not a blanket statement of I don't feel good enough, I wonder in what ways is it actually affecting me that I actually believe I'm not good enough? And you see, now we have a category that we've narrowed it down to that we can start to feel some empowerment over. Oh, it's not everything in my life, it's this specific area. Now, if we don't want to go into, oh, it's connected to this person, it's connected to this experience, that's too overwhelming, or maybe we're just not even aware of what that is, we still have other clues that we can follow. Let's talk about that. As we're tapping, we're going to look into our sensory experiences. I know I don't feel good enough. How do I know that? Well, because I feel it. Where do I feel it? Well, I feel it in my chest. It feels heavy. And now we're going to apply our other sensory organs, right? Well, what color is it? If it had a smell, what would it smell like? If it had a taste, what would it taste like? If it was making a sound, what would it sound like? And as we allow ourselves this creativity, it's going to engage our subconscious brain, and we're tapping at the same time. So our subconscious brain is going, wait, I'm seeing that there's this heaviness, there's all these issues in the chest, but then it also feels like there's something pleasing happening. Which one is true? I better check this out. And so it's going to say, oh, yeah, I was feeling this heaviness, but I checked on it, and what's actually true is I'm feeling this tapping right now. And so that can start to go away. I don't need that anymore. And so you start to feel relief. Pretty cool, huh? So as I said, that is called Chasing the Pain. And that's something I'll tell you where you can find that resource at the end of this webinar. So after you apply EFT, we're going to affirm what has happened. Now keep in mind, this has gone pretty fast, and you can do it this fast in real life. You can tap for 2 to 3 minutes and check back in and see where this has gone. Because remember, your subconscious brain processes incredibly fast. It doesn't need a lot of time if you know how to speak to it. So check back in on your number. Okay, well, when I think about I'm not good enough, it's no longer at a 9, now it's at a 2. Wow, that really worked for me. And then you can continue the process. You can tap again on that too, or you can move on to something else if you're, oh, I realize this goes deeper, it went into this thing. And I can teach you all about how that works, but we don't have time to go into that here. But just know that this is a solid process, and just this information right here is enough for you to feel tremendous relief when you're feeling overwhelmed in the moment. Now, that is all I have time to share with you about the process of EFT, but I am going to share with you a few examples of being a clinically certified EFT practitioner and the differences that it's made in a couple of my clients. I once had a young 19-year-old female who was an EMT come to me, and she was feeling like her life was over. She was feeling completely helpless and hopeless. She was speaking language that was really letting me know that she was having end-of-life ideations. This was right when lockdowns were happening at the beginning of the pandemic, and being 19 and trying to create a career that now was no longer possible, she was feeling really, really, really upset. As we tapped and I explained a little bit about the subconscious brain, and we found this belief that she just had no control over her future and everything was hopeless, we unwound that for her. And we did that through how she was feeling in her body. And we did that through the pendulum swing of what's the actual truth of this? It's true, you don't have control over everything right now. But is it true that you don't have control over anything? Is it true that you will never have control over these things? And what we did was we found the places of empowerment. We found the places of truth. She went from telling me at the beginning of the session that out of 0 to 10, she felt a 0% chance of her life being good, to out of 0 to 10, her life having an 8 chance of being good. Almost perfect. She felt excited about her potential opportunities, and this happened in under an hour. Another example I want to share with you is with a middle-aged man who works in the IT field in the medical industry. Now, this gentleman doesn't engage in any kind of this type of self-help work. He'd never heard of EFT, and it was really, really weird for him to consider it, but he said he would give it a try. I had a very limited window in which to engage him and 0 time to explain what to do. So we just jumped into it. And I chose to talk about how he felt it in his body because I knew that that was a way he could relate without having any other information. The issue that was in front of him was he was feeling very insecure about his job because of his boss. Now, his boss is someone who just constantly made bad decisions, was causing a lot of issues for other people, and he was constantly having to pick up all these broken pieces and juggle them that this boss was creating in his wake. And so his issue was, my boss is an idiot and it's going to ruin me. So when I asked him how he knew that and where he felt that in his body as we were tapping, he began to describe this array of sensation. I asked him, when else in your life have you felt these sensations? And what we discovered is that those sensations actually went back to another time in his life when he felt really vulnerable and that the situation was out of his control. It was when he watched his alcoholic father begin to drink. So we tapped on the emotions of that, not talking about actually seeing his father or anything that happened with that, but just on releasing those emotions from his body back from that age. It took a few minutes, and then I checked back in on him about how he felt about his boss, since that had been connected in his subconscious brain, because it was a vulnerable experience connected to a vulnerable experience. And remember, the subconscious brain doesn't have a timeline. To the subconscious brain, those things were both happening in real time and they were interlinked. Because we tapped on it and he was able to release those emotions of the first experience, the second experience now had no validity either. When I checked in on how he felt about his boss being an idiot, he was now able to say, it's just who this person is, they're never going to change, but I can focus on the job that I do, how well I do it, and the value that I bring. He was able to stop letting that affect every part of his life, and he still works at this company to this day. And that happened with him in under 10 minutes. I have more examples for you on where you can learn and apply EFT yourself, but not that I can share right now. Let's move on to how the rhythms are impactful for you. If you're wanting to know more about EFT, don't worry. I promise I will give you resources. I'm not here to tease you. I will make sure that you have what you need to succeed. We're going to shift in how to obtain forward movement. Now, EFT is a bridge, and it's a great way to release what we don't want. Now, let's talk about how to see what we do want and what we can communicate to our subbies in an actionable way. The 5 rhythms of Chinese medicine are a perspective tool set. It is a way for you to view your life, your own behavior, and explain the behavior and the actions of others in a way that is simple, that is quick to assess, that is empowering, and that is actionable. And you will come to understand what I mean by actionable as we talk about it. But let me ask you a question first. What relationship in your life is exactly how you want it? Any of them. What about how you feel about yourself? Well, what makes it lacking? Not enough love? Not enough try or give? Now, it's possible that those are your issues, and it usually feels that way, but it's unlikely that that's your problem. When 2 or more people really try, but the end result is still not what you wanted, it's usually the perspective tool that you're using. Now, compromise is a dirty word, but not for the reason everyone is currently saying. When you view your relationships through compromise, you are saying, let's agree that neither of us will really get what we want, but we don't want it to end here, so let's just do the best that we can. Now, this doesn't feel good, whether you are the one saying you'll give up what you want, or that you're okay with not really being what the other person wants. But what other solution exists if you aren't going to see eye to eye here? You change the perspective that you're using. Remember what you just learned about the subconscious brain, 4 billion opportunities. Now you divide that by the 200 that the conscious can receive, and it means that 20 million other completely different possibilities exist. But let's say only 10% of them are truly applicable and viable for this circumstance. Well, that's still 2 million other options. But what are they? And how do you find them when you're currently blind to them? And how do you keep track of what and when to apply when every moment is potentially a different experience and a different target? The rhythms are your answer. Let's discuss why. So here are the 3 top reasons for relationship issues to occur. 1 being lost trust. Now, this happens in so many ways, but some of the more prominent ways are when you've had negative experiences with each other. Okay, I already know what you're going to say. I already know what you're going to do. You've done this for 10 years. That is going to make it hard to trust someone in that same circumstance. When you've had previous negative relationships, it has nothing to do with this as a person, but because men, or because women, or because some other way that you've categorized this person that you're expecting them to have this outcome. Also, when you've had traumatic experiences in general, it can be hard to just trust people or to put your emotions out there again when you've been hurt so many times or in so many different ways or in a very particular way that this person wishes that they could connect with you, but you just can't find that trust. Another way is early experiences, when you have poor modeling structure. Now, by that, I mean what behaviors, what circumstances, what responses, what outcomes you have been handed. Now, this can be handed to you in multiple ways. It can be through your family, it can be through your culture, it can be through your community, it can be through something like your religion or other organized systems that you're a part of. Having a dysfunctional family. Maybe you know better, but that's not what you experienced. And you know that this should be able to happen, but you have no idea how because this is what your experience was. There's a gap and you don't know how to fill that. Or early childhood trauma. And we know all about how our brain can get in the way of that now, right? When we're stuck in a survival mode, particularly in something as foundational as our early experiences of safety, of connection, of communication, when that's been traumatized and not healed, that can really get in the way. The last top reason for relationship issues is long-term stress. When we have money issues, which is a threat to our survival, when we have health issues, which is a threat to our survival, and when we have issues with children and caretaking, that's a threat to our emotional survival, to our quality of life, to our relationships. All of these things can really feel like it's a very, very difficult way to find a solution to move forward that truly feels good and like a solution to both people. Now, if you were to search for a solution online, very likely you're going to come across this phrase, actionable understanding. What is actionable understanding? Well, let me show you what the definition is. It's very long and arduous and honestly doesn't really explain much. So let me just narrow it down for you a little bit. What I pulled out of it is that it's basically you understand and you generally agree with what is, you and whoever else is involved, and then you take action from that space. So that's clear. And now you know what to do, right? No. This is why most solutions out there do not work, all right? Number one, they're too complicated. They have too many options to remember, that the solutions are just way too complex and there's so many steps. And if you don't follow the steps or the other person doesn't follow the steps, and it all falls apart. And that's not easy to recall anyway when you're in an actual situation, especially if you're emotionally engaged and you're being upregulated. That's just really complicated to pull out of your pocket. Number two, they're too rigid in definition. Now, this is talking about other ways of validating behavior, right? We've got the Myers-Briggs, which is a fantastic system. I absolutely love it, but there's 16 different categories. I don't remember all of the aspects of my own, much less the other 15. And then when I meet someone, if they don't know what I'm talking about, then how am I supposed to assess who they are, or how to communicate with them, or how they're translating what I'm saying, or how do I translate what they're saying? Because it's really hard for me to understand what perspective they're speaking to me from. And then there's the issues of what if you don't exactly fit? What if you fit parts of multiple options of whatever translation, whatever perspective tool you're using? Or what if you don't fit any of them? Because if you don't fit any of them, then you have no chance of moving forward, which is really discouraging. So the definitions just don't work because it doesn't work for everybody. And also, this is my biggest beef, they leave out the action part, the part that actually will help you in a real situation. Information is not action. Descriptions of behavior is not action. Insight is not action. If you are given these things, but not shown how to take action, at the time of receiving them, you'll feel insightful, you'll feel empowerment, you'll be like, aha, I've had light bulbs. But then when you go to apply them, you'll wonder why they aren't working. You'll wonder why things aren't the same. You'll wonder why you didn't have the outcome that you were anticipating, because it left out how it's actually going to assist you in a moment of action. Now, the 5 rhythms of Chinese medicine are a solution because everyone has all 5. There are 5 and everyone has all 5. Now, they can be expressed in many, many different ways, which is why we're all different, because we have different expressions of it and different levels of each one, but they are all 5, and it's coming from one of the 5. So whatever response you're receiving is trackable and traceable and actionable, because you can understand it, because it's something that you also have that you can connect with. They have thousands of years as a personality profile. This is something that's still very active as an actual basis of medicine in one of the largest countries on earth. It works. They're simple and they're easy to remember. It allows you to view people based off of their behavior and their attributes, which is typically how we see people anyway. So it's a really easy way to translate that into a rhythmic lens. The rhythms offer multiple pathways for communication and resolution. Each rhythm supports, affects, and structures the others. So you always have an answer. There's always a solution. So because of that, there is no pass-fail. Everyone is a blend of the rhythms. You are all 5. I am all 5, period. So then it just becomes a matter of how well do I understand this perspective tool to apply it to how I'm behaving, how you're behaving, and how we can find a bridging point to connect on. And the rhythms help you do that in a really fast way and an easily actionable way that works. So let's talk about what the rhythms actually are. Now, the rhythms exist for 2 reasons. 1, to explain behavior, and 2, to address the imbalance. Now, what I mean by imbalance is you can have too much emphasis in a rhythm and too little emphasis in a rhythm. And everybody has their own levels of what that balance looks like. When you have dysfunction in a space, it shows and it starts to disrupt other areas of your life. Just like if you have dysfunction in sleep, you have insomnia, you're going to start having foggy brain. You're not going to have as much memory. You're not going to have clarity. You're not going to have energy. But you go and address the imbalance that's causing that insomnia, everything else is going to resolve. It's the same thing when you take this perspective tool and you apply it to your behavior. You find out the place where you feel out of balance, where something isn't getting what it needs, and it alleviates all of these other issues. So if you go and Google the 5 rhythms of Chinese medicine, or as it's more commonly translated in the United States, the 5 elements of Chinese medicine, you're going to find a lot of misinformation out there. But you're likely going to see this chart right here. Now, this chart gives you a lot of information, and it's solid information, but it's not complete. And that can really be a disservice to you. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. I can touch on it in this webinar, but I can't go very deep. Just I'd have you here for days. But I have rearranged this a little bit. I've got my own chart that still shows all of this information that I'm going to use to explain what it is that you're looking at. Now, you see colors, you see circles, you see arrows. Let me explain to you what this means. So each of the 5 rhythms is represented here by a color. Water is blue, wood is green, fire is red, earth is yellow, and metal is white. Now, the 5 rhythms are named after these elements in nature, not because they have anything to do with those elements, but more because the energy of that rhythm behaves a lot like the element. Now, the arrows that you see here along the outside is called the creation cycle because one of the ways that the rhythms can affect each other is by giving the next rhythm energy. Now, according to this chart, this is the only way that the rhythms can feed each other, and that's an inaccuracy. But this is still true. It's just not complete. They do feed each other in this way. It's just not the only way that they can feed each other. Now, the inside starfish, you see that there are arrows in there too. This is called the control cycle. So much like the rhythms can feed each other, they can also dampen each other, meaning calm each other down. And that's accurate and true. It's just not the only way that they can assist each other in lessening an overwhelm of energy. Now, that's as deep as I'm going to go into the issues of the inconsistencies that you'll find online, except for this one thing. This is not what our energy looks like, and it's not how it behaves at any given moment. We're just not that flat in our behavior. Rather, if we were to see what our energy looks like as the 5 rhythms are engaging, it would be more like this. They're blending together, they're shifting, and they're growing, and they're moving, and they're out of balance, and they're in balance, and they're too little and too much. And how you choose to operate can look like a different blend in every single thing. So let's talk a little bit more about each rhythm to help you understand where your behavior is coming from in each of the 5, because remember, you are all 5. Starting with water rhythm. Here's a meme that I found that I just feel like kind of captures the essence of water. Water has a really strong imagination because remember, this is potential energy. It's so strong. But sometimes water has a hard time determining, wait, did I just think about that? Did that actually happen? Where did this information come from? Now, the most basic need of the water rhythm is to be valued. When it offers its give, it's an emotional give. And so what water is hoping for is to feel valued by that. And if it's not something that they're given, then they're going to start to disconnect from you and you're going to start to have issues. Now, some attributes with water is the flowy, go with the flow, pretty relaxed people, vivid imagination we talked about. They have a really strong emotional intuition. Because of this, water is going to have a deep resolution to whatever it is that they feel and that they can see. And it doesn't matter to them how long it takes. If it's a 20-long-year goal, they can see the outcome. They can feel it. They're connected to it personally and emotionally, so they're going to see it through, which means they can tend to have a stubborn streak as well. In water rhythm lives the unique ability to have a 360-degree view. Someone who operates heavily in water is going to be able to see their perspective, your perspective, the perspective of this person over here, potential perspectives of other people that aren't even involved yet. And water tends to cry when they're in overwhelm. And this can be a positive overwhelm of their heart being touched. It can be an overwhelm if they're so scared. It can be an overwhelm if they're so angry. Part of that response is likely going to be tears are falling out of their eyeballs. Water best connects by non-direct communication, which means you don't want to pummel them with forward direction. I'm looking at you, wood rhythm people. Now, what this looks like is approaching them with a statement such as, I would really value your opinion on what it is that's keeping us from having a clean living space. I've noticed that things just tend to pile up, particularly in this one area. And I really wonder what it would be like if we sat down and just created maybe a system that we could use so that this isn't an issue anymore. Rather than approaching them like, that's it, I'm done. I'm so tired of all this junk collecting in this one spot. How are we going to fix this? It's going to feel too aggressive for someone who is communicating through their water rhythm. So how are you a water? Remember, you are water, as you have all 5. Next, let's talk a little bit about wood. The power, the drive, the overcoming obstacles, the success of what? It doesn't matter because wood is just going to overcome it no matter what. Are you tough enough? Prove it. Why? Wood doesn't ask. Wood just takes off to go and prevail. Wood's most basic need is to be understood. The reason for this is because they're constantly looking for forward movement. You can't move forward if what they're talking about isn't translating to your brain. Now, if that isn't allowed, if that isn't given in your communication, then you're going to hear about it and probably in a very unpleasant way, as wood tends to be a very forward, aggressive energy. It is best to communicate with wood energy through direct bullet points, again, being short and succinct, and allowing them to be heard first, because if they're trying to speak and they're not allowed to, they're not hearing anything you're saying because they're just completely focused on what they're wanting to get out of their mouth. Some attributes of wood rhythms is that they're constantly ready for action. This is the person that if they're operating in their wood rhythm, you say, "You ready to go?" "Yep, let's go." They're very quick at decision making, again, because they want that forward movement. If things change, fine. If we need to shift, fine, but let's do it on the go. They're very task and goal oriented. Someone that makes to-do lists and then likes to go down and cross them off, they're probably operating from their wood rhythm. Wood rhythm people tend to be highly engaging, very inspiring. They want to promote the cause. They want to inspire leadership in themselves by engaging other people to follow them. And because they are so focused on forward movement, they are very innovative people, very good at problem solving, because getting stuck is the worst thing ever to someone operating in their wood rhythm. So with this beginning explanation, how are you a wood? Moving on to fire rhythm. I love this meme for fire because fire is all about in the moment and full of joy. When there's a fire blazing, it doesn't go, "Oh no, I better calm my flames down because I may not have enough fuel to keep burning for the next 5 minutes." No, it's going to consume everything that it has right there because why not? This moment is the moment that's happening. Fire rhythm very much operates in that sense. So fire's most basic need is to conspire, meaning whatever moment they're in, they need to pull you in to their moment. They want you to be feeling and experiencing the same thing that they are. So if they're dancing, they're going to dance up to you and try to get you to dance. They want to have that shared moment with you, so conspire with you. The best way to connect with fire rhythm is to lean into that ability to conspire. Let's do this together. You know what would be so much fun? You say those words, those are like magic to a fire rhythm. Some attributes of the fire rhythm are that it's fast processing. It's actually the only rhythm that processes faster than wood rhythm. Fire is usually very forward with their passion, with their joy. It's a big energy. It's an explosive energy. With someone who operates a lot in their fire rhythm, they're going to be highly expressive and generally really fun to be around. They very much live in the moment, which means they're practically incapable of holding a grudge because they just don't want to. That happened like 5 minutes ago. Yes, it was frustrating, but let's talk about right now. And they can easily hold space for themselves. It's just the way things are. I speak my words, I have my opinion, you speak your words, you have your opinion, and then we figure out what we're going to do from there. It's very matter of fact for fire. So how are you a fire rhythm? Next, let's talk about earth. Now, this meme for earth is very nurturing. It's very loving, which is an aspect of earth and typically the one that's most likely pronounced whenever you go to look into what earth rhythm is. However, because of earth's interest in the inclusion of everyone, earth is also the most incredible networker. Everyone has an interest in connecting with earth, and therefore earth rhythm has the most potential to be able to get things done. So the most basic need of earth rhythm is to be acknowledged because earth does things for other people first rather than itself. It's so meaningful for earth to receive an emotional gratitude for that. Now, if you're engaging with someone and they're in their earth rhythm and they're not receiving that, then the communication is going to start to have issues. You can best connect with an earth energy with, "Will you help me?" Or would you like to do this together? Because again, earth wants that connection. Now, it's different than the connection to fire. Fire is all about, I want you to feel this with me in this moment. I want to see my moment come alive in your eyes. Whereas earth is like, this is our moment. This is where we get to shine. This is where I get to see you become fulfilled in what you were looking for. And that's going to feel so good to me. So that is what matters for earth. Some attributes that earth is able to show in this type of engagement is it's very strong in repetitive tasks. It's really great at being a support. So someone who can show up to a job and do the same job every day for 30 years, as long as it knows that this job is important, that people rely on this job, and that it matters for the outcome, an earth rhythm can be very happy working that type of job. And again, earth is an incredible networker. Earth is able to touch people on an emotional level, again, because that is the intention of earth as an energy. Because of this, earth is able to bring things to fruition more easily than most of the other rhythms, and in a very gentle way that is a win-win for all people involved. And because of this being the way that earth communicates, it's generally really, really great at reading between the lines. So how are you an earth rhythm? And finally, let's talk about metal. Now, this meme for metal is poignant because metal is so amazing at seeing structures and processes and how things work in an intricate way that it's almost like they can predict the future, and they are almost always right. The most basic need for metal rhythm is to be respected, meaning that not only I see and I understand where you're coming from, but I respect the conclusion that you've come to, because metal puts so much of their own identity into what they see and their potential to be right, which is most of the time. They want you to respect that. If you don't, then your communication with someone operating in a metal rhythm is going to quickly become stilted. You can best connect with a metal rhythm by approaching them with, well, what do you think of this situation? And would you mind to take a look at this for me? So someone operating highly in their metal rhythm is going to be highly aware of their surroundings, and they're going to translate them somatically, meaning through their sensory organs, not so much emotionally. So if they walk into a room that feels chaotic, they're not going to go, oh, I feel overwhelmed. I feel anxious. They're going to go, oh, I'm sick to my stomach, or, oh, I have a headache. I can't be in here. Someone who operates highly in metal is going to be very compartmentalized. They're going to be able to take this and put it to that part of their life, and take this and put it to that part of their life. And these two parts may never, ever connect. We've already talked about how they can project results accurately. They're highly logical, black and white viewpoint people, which can be very difficult to have them look at something when it needs a little bit more flexibility. Because they tend to be right all the time, they can be very resolute on their opinions and boundaries, and it's difficult for them to look at something through any other viewpoint unless you can convince them to start to shift to another rhythm. And because the way a metal operates is very much connected to their identity, they have a great recall and a great memory of all of the different systems and things that they've recognized. Like someone who operates heavily in metal might be able to say, well, back in 2008, on June 14th at 2 p.m., you were parked in my spot, and they'll be right. So how are you a metal rhythm? Now, these explanations are fun, but how does this apply to actual communication in real time? Well, let's talk a little bit about balance. So when we are engaging with someone, we're looking for balance. We're looking for balance in ourselves. We're looking for balance between whoever it is that we're engaging with. And if we look for this balance outside of the rhythms, that can be really complicated and difficult because we don't really understand all the viewpoints and perspectives of why this person is expressing the way that they are. Or we might judge them in some way and say, oh my gosh, they're such a jerk. Oh, they're so flighty. They never make a decision. And that's completely unhelpful. So if we apply this rhythmic lens and we're able to see them, whether they're in balance or not, it allows us to find solutions on how we might be able to communicate with them in a way that's going to be helpful. So we've talked about the core need of each rhythm. Now, when you are engaging that in an imbalance way, then you get the balanced outcome, which is what we've talked about. Now, when it's attributed in an out of balance way, when it starts to spiral in a negative sense, what you're going to receive from water rather than valued is they're going to start to avoid. They're going to protect themselves by just not being available, whether that's physically or emotionally. And with wood, when they're not being understood, you're going to get told. Okay, you're going to really hear their opinion on that, and they're not going to care what you have to say about it. With fire, when they're not being able to conspire, they're going to completely abandon. And this doesn't matter how much you're depending on them. Nothing matters. They're out. With earth, if they're not feeling recognized and appreciated for who they are emotionally, then what they're going to do is start to demand. They're going to say, hey, I have given all of myself to this, and now you need to understand and you need to give back. And when metal is not feeling respected, what you're going to get is denied. You're going to hit a wall, and metal is going to say, no, absolutely not, never again. Is that starting to feel familiar in some circumstances? Now, what happens when you take rhythms that are different from each other and they try to communicate? So we talked about those top 3 reasons on why communication is stilted and difficult in relationships. Let's look at that through a rhythmic lens. So what happens when you have someone expressing from fire and someone expressing from wood? And the fire expresses genuinely from their fiery self, but the wood receives it through their wood lens. And then the wood communicates back through their wood lens, but the fire receives it through their fire lens. Let me give you a quick example. So let's say there's a wood and a fire. And when I say there's a wood and a fire, I just mean someone who's operating at this moment from that rhythm. We are constantly shifting our rhythms, and we always have all 5, and we're usually engaging more than one at a time. I'm just speaking this in very simple terms because this is a basis of foundation for you. So I don't want to overcomplicate it when I'm giving you circumstances, but it is always true that we are all 5 and that we are operating from all 5 to some degree at every given moment. Okay? All right. So when you have someone operating from fire and someone operating from wood, and let's say they're taking a class together and they've been assigned as part of a group, and this group project accounts for half of the grade of this class. So it's really, really important that it goes well. So they're both excited and they're both engaged and they're both in balanced states. Now wood, because wood wants forward movement, wood is leadership, is likely going to start to take over. And that's okay with generally everyone because wood does a good job with that. So they start to lead the group, and then fire comes up and says, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. Oh, we should have an opening party. Like we should throw a party, and so that we can come up with a theme and everybody can come dressed in our theme. And then we can have a bowl of our ideas. So everybody could just throw their ideas into this bowl. And then like at some point during the party, we could pull out the ideas and read them and like maybe line them up so that we can see which ones, or like just pick out which ones we want to do. How does that sound? The way wood is likely to receive this is to filter it through a wood filter, which is to say, this is not about fun. This is about our objective. And we have to muscle through our objective. We have to charge towards our objective. We don't have time for parties. It is stupid to get dressed up in an outfit. And everything that you just said is a distraction and a waste of time. Ouch. Now, even if wood says that in a nicer way, how do you think fire is going to translate that? They're going to hear this woody language and they're going to translate that through their fire lens because that's where they are right now, right? What they're going to hear is, you're ridiculous. I don't want to connect with you. All of your ideas are terrible and I want you to go away. So completely invalidating fire's desire to conspire. You've cut them off completely. Now, how is this person likely to respond? You've knocked them out of balance. Okay? Now, how could this possibly go better? If the reactions of both people are the same, what if the person operating in wood has an understanding of rhythmic function and they recognize, oh, this person is contributing, but they're contributing as a fire, and I need to speak back to them through fire rhythm so that this can have a positive outcome. So wood rhythm can then say, oh my gosh, I love how excited you are. This is going to be so great. I think getting together is a really good idea. I don't think it's time to party yet because we really want to be serious about this. We don't have much time. I do like the idea of gathering everybody's ideas. That's a fantastic idea. We can put them in a bowl. That's fine. But then maybe voting on them, is the way that we want to go with that. And having a party, how about as we go through this, part of your job is to plan like an after party so that after we get a good grade, we can all celebrate together. How does that sound? It is allowing fire to conspire. It is speaking to their strong points and allowing them to contribute and be there in a way that they're capable. Do you see how impactful communicating this way can be? It helps you to avoid the outcome of what you see on the lower half of this worksheet. So, how do you discover what way you're responding and what way other people are responding? Well, you do a little bit of footwork. Now, this is just an example. We don't have time to go into this now, but again, this is a resource that I offer. You do an assessment. And this is so valuable. Taking the time to do this is so insightful. A quick example of this, I had someone in a workshop who gave compliments as an earth, which means that we're very emotional about it. They were very effusive to the person, really wanting them to feel good about how good of a job that they were doing. The person that they were communicating with received compliments as a wood. So when this wood was receiving these earthy compliments, it was really uncomfortable for them and it was too much. And they were really just kind of muscling, sitting through that. When really what someone who receives compliments as a wood and that feels good to them, all they want is high five, good job, hey you, way to go. And that's it. That does it for them. That's great. And that can be really foreign for someone who's used to giving compliments as an earth. It's a very, very valuable exercise. So let me give you just a few ways that you can begin to explore your own rhythms. I want you to build a foundation of curiosity. Ask yourself questions as you go throughout your day. Because remember, you are all five and so is everybody else. But once you understand how these five operate in you, you will start to see them and recognize them in other people. So if they don't fill out a sheet like you filled out the sheet, you can still view them through a rhythmic lens, translate what's happening, and connect with them at a point that's going to work. Now let me share with you a few of my rhythm stories. I once had a session with a person who was really frustrated at the time of our session. So I asked what was wrong. And they said, well, I've had this whole week to myself. I've had all this time off, which is really rare for me at work. And I've completely wasted it. And I'm really angry at myself. I feel so stupid. And so I said, oh, well, how did you waste your time? And so they went into describing to me the activities that they've done. And I was really confused because they were describing activities that strengthened the rhythms of who this person is in their personal life. So then I asked, well, why do you feel like those were wastes of time? And they said, well, because I had this plan of things that I was supposed to do and I didn't do any of it. And I said, well, what was your plan? And what they outlined to me was a great plan, but the functions that they have to be strong in order to do their job, which are different rhythms than what they're strong in their personal life. And so what I suggested to them was, well, perhaps because your work has been so intense lately and you've had to focus in these other rhythms that are not your personal function, you are a little bit drained in the places of your personal function and you needed that time. You needed this time to replenish yourself. And so you naturally engaged, you intuitively engaged in these other activities. And how are you feeling now as a person versus when you first started this time off? And so they began to look at this time off in a different way. And they were like, you know what? You're right. I was so burnt out and I was feeling this way. And I took this list and I made this list and this plan very much in like my breaks at work. And so I was very much in that other mindset, but I did need all of these things. And now going into this time in work, I didn't get these things done that I'm still going to have to find some time to get them done, but I feel better. And then they were able to see the value in themselves and the value in the way that they engaged and a way to allow their self-care. And another opportunity, I had someone approach me who told me that their friends and their life were very important to them. They didn't really have family that they were connected to, so their friends were their family. And they had one friend that they really cared for and they wanted to be closer to, but they felt like every time they attempted to get closer, they weren't succeeding. They felt like they were more squishing and harming their relationship than they were succeeding and making anything better. So in applying the rhythmic lens, what we discovered is that this person operates heavily in metal, which is very black and white, very direct communication, and that their friend operated highly in water, which is very flowy and soft and roundabout. and very indirect communication. Well, the metal person thought that they were assisting their friend in allowing them to utilize their boundaries and their sharp, stark opinions, when in fact, those opinions were being translated by the water person in a very negative way. So the metal person was able to soften the way that they were applying themselves to their friend through engaging their own water, through engaging a little bit of earth, and softening their metal in this particular circumstance. And it worked wonders. It took a very short amount of time, and this friend really appreciated this engagement, even learned about the rhythms themselves, and now these two consider each other to be siblings. You see how a simple shift using the lens of the 5 rhythms can have a profound effect and a more positive outcome. It really is that simple, and I will continue to show you that with the resources that I have for you. So far, you have learned what trauma really is and what it isn't. You know that you have a strong survival skill, and that is good. And you know you have the ability to communicate with your million times stronger self, and you likely do that in a very negative, overwhelming way right now. But you also know that even that makes sense due to how your brain is triggered once in overwhelm, and it needs specific input from you to downregulate. And now you're aware of what input, which is the first step. You know that information is not action, and that taking action is a different tool set than gathering information. You learned how to apply a rhythmic lens to allow you to quickly assess, to understand yourself and others in an easily actionable way that allows you true change in a very short amount of time. You learned that your lens of reality is shockingly small compared to the true possibilities that exist around you. And you learned how you can collaborate with your subconscious brain in order to access those other possibilities. You have knowledge of all the tools that you need to live your life rather than the life that was put upon you. The techniques, exercises, and tools that I have taught you already hold great value, but I'm not done. I pieced this together, but I wasn't able to accomplish this on my own. At each step, I found a mentor, a tremendous teacher who also held passion and purpose, and they assisted me within their bounds. That's why I made the decision that when I created this training and the other courses that I have, that I created them with the same expectation of you learning and going through the same process I went through myself by giving you step-by-step clear pathways to heal your trauma with support. I have created a community for you. I have created tools and lines of communication so that we have access to each other in real time to talk and learn and practice all of this together. There is power in a community filled with people who hold the intention to heal. And it doesn't matter how broken or incapable you might feel now. What matters is where you are looking to go. You deserve to heal. And you deserve to feel supported and seen. And none of that should cost so much that you have to choose whether to heal or eat, heal or pay rent, heal or feel comfortable with your bank account number. You deserve both. So I'm doing something radical, something I've been told to not do by numerous strategists and business consultants, because I am so committed to your healing and recovery. My entire community, the tools, the techniques, the workbooks, the video trainings, etc., are all made available to you for just $4.99 a month. Not $499 like many other programs in this space, $4.99 a month, $1.25 a week in my community, and included in your monthly subscription, you will receive my trauma education course. This is going to take you into more depth on trauma and commit the important parts to memory as you take the quizzes. You receive a rhythms course. Now this course goes into much more depth on understanding who you are in a rhythmic lens. You receive an EFT course. Learn more about EFT and the actual science behind it. Along with quizzes and a community badge, you will get tap-alongs and examples of practical application. You receive live EFT tappings weekly. Come tap with me. Courses are valuable, but experience is priceless. Join me live for an hour each week to release what's in your way. You get a live rhythm book club. Now this book club is unlike any other. Come weekly and join me in rhythm discussion as we put your perspectives into practice. Learn depth and nuance to assist you with supporting your rhythms and the rhythms of those around you. We have a live EFT book club. We have our live event of tapping, but what about your questions? Well, I answer those here. Using the official EFT handbook as a guide, we explore all of your questions related to this tool set for trauma and overwhelm release. We have a live Q&A. Not sure what it is you need to ask? Join this community discussion where we blend it all together and we can be flexible on the topic. Connect with other community members here and build a new support system. You get access to Daniel's vlog. Now, Daniel is not only a living success story for how effective the rhythms and EFT can be, but he has a unique viewpoint that he can offer that I can't. What it was like growing up as a boy. Join Daniel as he guides you through understanding and releasing what has been put on those who are stereotyped into being what a man is. You aren't alone, and even in casual conversation, we will find connection and discover insights together. Now, if you were to pay for each of these things at the value at which they were assessed, it would cost nearly $2,400 a month. Clearly, I'm valuing my give, my effort through another system of measurement other than monetary gain. What I'm after is you, the real you. I want your belief in yourself, your commitment, your try. I'm willing to give you all of this as my give in return. This is my try. Now, this class has given you a fire hose of information, and it's rich with opportunity, and it is a complete offering. You can go and apply this today, but it's scratching the surface. There are nuances and left turns and invisible blocks and a depth of information I can't teach you in an hour. I have so much more to share. Continue to learn and experience with me. I'm adding new layers to the community all of the time. Now, I've been warned that this won't work, that the only way to get people to say yes to something is to pressure them, that you will only see value in what I offer if it's really expensive, or if I fill you up with fear and scarcity of how it's going to go away, or if you don't act now, or if I don't remind you how awful your life will be and the lives of your children if you don't act. But I refuse. If this is the only interaction that we have, I want you to have experienced someone genuinely caring more about you than what they can charge you. For me, this is more about the overall crime of how this isn't household information yet, rather than about me becoming rich by selling it in exclusive and strategic ways. I care more about inspiring you and supporting you than triggering you for the action that I want you to take. You see, this way it only works if we trust each other and we work together. It's a different kind of offer, and I'm asking you to collaborate with me, and your answer really matters. Are you ready for it? Are you ready to take an honest look at your inner belief systems and release what isn't working for you anymore? Are you ready to show up consistently and let that be your pass-fail rather than judging your progress every time you try something? Are you ready to apply small and simple steps and acknowledge how they are working? Are you ready to build a tool set and apply it so that you can stop trying to get what you want and instead live what you want? If so, this is for you. And it's possible that you feel this and other things, that parts of you are arguing. Perhaps you've tried so much for so long, or this sounds too woo-woo for you, or you're just watching and waiting for me to say something or do something so you can call out, aha, and be done with it. I mean, if this isn't a fit for you, that's okay. Trust yourself. But if you feel some or all of that and you're still here, trust that too. Healing is unsettling. You're knocking yourself out of your current balance. Remember, there are parts of you that are going to complain about that. And that's okay. That's healthy. That's why I created this place of support for you. No more pass, fail. No more, this is your moment. This is your one chance. Nope. I plan to be around, and I plan to hold steady on this offer. I will hold space for you. What you need to answer is this. Are you ready to allow yourself permission to try, to be curious? Your risk of it not working out is extremely low, but your chances of something really amazing actually happening are pretty good. Can you say yes to that? I hope so. I invite you to make a commitment to yourself and to your healing by joining me in my community. I hope I see you again soon. Thanks for coming today. Bye for now.